Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm KandyCorpse, you can call me Kay, and I'm actually filming this after I read the stories because I didn't realize that one of the stories I clicked on was literally gonna take 30 minutes for me to read. It was like three separate stories all put into one very long post, which I didn't realize at the time. So be prepared, because some of this, it does get gory, it gets a little scary. So just like a quick trigger warning for, mention of like suicide, mention of self-harm, mention of like, dead bodies, things like that. This involves a crime scene cleaner. So there's gonna be some gruesome stuff that's gonna be brought up. I just want everyone to be aware. So you've been warned. My experiences as a crime scene cleaner, something like that, whether you believe in the paranormal or not, you're gonna see some shit. A crime scene cleaner, girl, I think I wouldn't mind being a crime scene cleaner, and I think I know someone who was for a little while. I don't remember. I remember someone telling me they were, but I honestly don't know if it's true. So the story goes, to start out, you need a little backstory to show how I got into this situation. When I got out of high school around 2003, finding a job was difficult, so I took whatever horrible jobs I could to get by. When I found a job cleaning fire and water damage full-time, I was excited to have steady income and start saving, but this quickly turned into a nightmare that I had to endure for almost 2 years. The company I worked for put me on my first job, which was a water damage claim where the basement flooded with sewage. So after a few days of work, we finished and it was on to the next job. My boss then called me into the office that next morning and told me about a special crew that he was setting up, and asked if I would be the crew leader supervising 3 other guys that were just hired. I found this strange, as I had only been working there a total of around 3 days, but figured my work ethic was already paying off and I'd get a raise. I only made $10 an hour to start. I mean, honestly, in 2003, it's not great, but it's, it was higher than minimum wage at the time. Not only did I not get the raise, I would be pissed, but I got no training in the new position other than a work van with cleaning material and the phone numbers for the 3 new guys that also were hired to the fire/water damage cleanup. The boss told me what tools were best to use and what cleaning products to use to sanitize, along with where everything else was located in the van, with hazmat suits and respirators, but he was vague about what kind of things I would clean up. He just said that situations were always different and I would get detailed instructions for each job. That's so sketchy. He called my position CSC crew leader. The boss told me that I would never have to see the deceased, as the coroner would have remains gone by the time the crew got there, and to use my logic to determine what needed to be removed from the homes and what could be cleaned. The first job I had in my new position, which the boss told me about when I got to the office, was cleaning up the remains of an elderly man or woman who died in their house that had been laying in the chair. When we arrived, the coroner had me come inside to show me a few things that were considered hazardous material and needed to be removed due to the risk of disease. I guess my boss knew a few people from the county coroner's office, and much of the work came from their recommendation. That's crazy. That's like so sketchy, actually. And to not get a raise, I'd be pissed. Not only was the deceased still in the house, girl, but was fully visible to me and the other guy, and you could smell the rot through the masks, as the house had no AC, and this was mid-June. The coroner was backed up and waiting on additional people to show up to load the body as it was falling apart. And I call the body it because I honestly couldn't tell if it was a male or female, and was trying not to look too long as it was disturbing. Yeah, that's disturbing, especially because the fact that he like specifically went out of his way to say, no, you won't be looking at bodies, and then yeah, you are. You're actually looking at like rotting bodies. That's crazy. And it's also really sad when stuff happens like that, whether like older people don't have kids or family or whatever, or, you know, just nobody checks in on them for a while and then finally someone does and they just like find them like that. Like I've heard stuff like that happening and it's really fucking sad. The other 3 guys I worked with handled it well, but 2 got sick from the smell and had to go outside to puke. Well, yeah. We all waited outside after the coroner showed us the chair, the fluid that leaked into the carpet, and the basement where the fluids went through the subfloor and puddled on some boxes in the basement. The coroner's support arrived and took the deceased out, and me and the crew started working. After about 5 minutes, weird things started to happen, the first of which was I began to disassemble the chair. I'd removed the back of the chair and was putting it into the special hazmat bags that I was given, and the base started to rock when I was about 10 feet away, putting the bag with the back of the chair by the front door. Nobody else was in the same room as the other guys were in the basement dealing with moving boxes. I brushed it off and took apart the base of the chair as much as I could. When I got to the bag, I got a chill up my back and then began feeling sick. I just figured it was the shock that I was from what I was cleaning that was hitting me, and I pushed on. Even though the chill was strange, as I was very hot in full hazmat in June. Yeah. Next was removing the carpet and assessing the floor to see if it would be able to be cleaned or if I had to remove a section of the floor. So I called the boss to ask him, and he told me just to pour a special cleaner in the area to soak into the floorboards and it would be fine. So I got it out of the truck where he said it was and brought it inside. When I got inside, all 3 of the guys in the basement were screaming to get out of the basement, tripping over each other, and all 3 ran outside. When I asked them what was up, all 3 said there was someone in the cluttered basement and they assumed it was a homeless person or a junkie. Detroit has many issues with these kinds of things. I listened at one of the open windows to the basement. It's kind of the first thing we did when we started working. Open any window possible, prop the doors open, so maybe someone got inside or possibly was there before we got there and was hiding. After listening a few minutes and hearing nothing, me and another of the workers went inside, armed with a mag light and a piece of metal fence post, and searched the basement. Nothing was down there but the footprints of the shoe covers we used. But when we started up the stairs, we heard a horrible hacking cough from somewhere in the basement. We looked for it, there was nothing, but in the corner of the basement, there was a bunch of dust stirred up like someone was moving things very recently that weirded us both out. We called the guys back in and they got back to the boxes, but all of them kept feeling like they were being touched while throwing away material from the boxes that got fluids on them. I went back to my upstairs job, but found the cleaner I put on the floorboards was gone, and I started getting frustrated as it was the only jug I had of this cleaner, and I clearly remembered it being next to the area before the guys ran up the stairs and my attention was redirected. I began to take the trash out, figuring I would find it eventually, or the basement guys took it for the floor, and I found it on its side behind the bag that had the back of the chair. That is impossible. There were like 6 other bags in front of this one near the front door, and this was a gallon bottle of cleaner. Again, I got a chill, but this one was brought on by what sounded like a whisper. I could not make out the words to. Cleaned the floorboards, moved out the trash, job complete. That night, each member of my crew had a dream about an older man telling us that we were not welcome in his home, touching his belongings, and we needed to leave. In my dream, I was alone in his house. The old man cried and told me I was destroying his things and he couldn't replace anything. He was trying to push me out of his house, but it was like I was ignoring him. Even when he would push me and scream at me, no reaction from me. He then threw my cleaner into the garbage pile that I had made in front of the door, exactly where I'd found it. 2 of 3 of the guys in the crew told me their dreams about the old man pushing them as they went through the boxes of ruined pictures and other old stuff that needed to be thrown out due to risk of disease from his fluids. They also said it was like they had no control or were on autopilot. They said they were so sad but couldn't do anything. The thing that got me about the dreams of the two other guys was that they both said the man was getting so upset that he began violently coughing, and that the man kept grabbing their arms when they would touch boxes or throw things into the trash. Neither of the guys were in the house when me and the other guy heard coughing from the basement. The guy that went in the basement with me said he had a dream, but all he remembered was waking up sad like he did something wrong and had a horrible coughing fit, which just might be a coincidence, but I connected it in my mind as relating to the other dreams. We all talked about it and came to the conclusion that we're all just having a reaction to a situation, and it was nothing more than our brains coping with what we had to do. I'm very into psychology, so I rationalized it the best I could, and we hoped for better assignments the next day. The next few jobs were not so bad: cleaning up blood at a home invasion, no casualty, but huge mess. Then there was a few other bloody crime scenes with casualties, but nothing notable happened. About 2 weeks into the job, we began to learn the tricks of the trade and were split into 2 different groups that I was responsible to manage as crew leader. So I would have to go to 2 different sites of the other 2 if the other 2 guys had an issue or didn't know what to do. I thought I was getting used to the job as well as the other guys. We had no other experiences like the first job, but I was wrong. The next job, that there was actively a suicide of a man that was middle-aged. The coroner had already removed his body, but it was a mess. Well, at least they had removed it this time before they got there. The guy had shot himself with what I think was a large caliber handgun or shotgun. That is messy, messy, messy. Depending on the gauge they used, and obviously with it being close range, there's gonna be brain matter and skull splinters everywhere. I know, I would know. I personally don't know someone who shot themselves, but one of my best friends did many years ago, someone extremely close to them. So he saw like what it looked like when it happened. I've had multiple people describe it to me because I've met people who have literally like seen it happen. It's crazy. As the spray was everywhere in the basement, in like a second living room, there were skull fragments lodged into the drywall, brain matter all over, and again, he was not found for a bit, so the smell was horrible. See, told you. First step in cleaning this was using our backpack vacuum cleaner to suck up all the biomaterial. The coroner told us when we went in that he and his partner were extremely uneasy in the house, and it felt strange, and we immediately started getting a claustrophobic, suffocating feeling when we went into the basement as well. To make matters worse, the family of the man had come over and were crying upstairs, but the vacuum noise helped to cancel out that. While I was cleaning, the power to the lights went out and it was completely pitch black. This was strange because my vacuum was still powered. My crewmate started screaming at that point, so I turned off my vacuum and climbed off my ladder. I thought maybe he touched a wire to the lights, but when my vacuum unit was turned off, he was still screaming and I could hear things being knocked over. I started fumbling around for my flashlight on my tool belt and yelled for my friend asking what was going on, but all I got back was panic screaming. Then I saw in pitch black something darker that was moving in my direction, and I will admit, I freaked out. I slipped trying to back up, still looking in my belt for the flashlight, and when I found it, my back had hit the basement wall. I turned on the light and aimed at the black shape I have never seen, and when the light turned on, I saw the shape of a man wearing a flannel shirt, beard, and an expression like he was about to attack me. Then it was just gone. My crewmate was behind where the entity was, sitting on the floor, rocking with his hands on his head. When I approached, he picked up his flashlight off the ground and turned it on, then ran up the stairs and outside and threw up. I followed behind him, asking if he was okay and why he was screaming. I thought I had just imagined the entity and the man because his screaming scared me, but he told me that he was scrubbing the wall and felt something pulling on his tool belt, and he thought it was me, but when he turned around, the lights were out, and he was engulfed by what he said was like dark smoke, and he immediately could not breathe and was struggling to move. He managed to pull his flashlight out, and it was knocked out of his hand like a wrist was grabbed with force. He managed to scream. When he screamed, trinkets started to fall off the entertainment center, and that was about 3 feet to his side, and the black smoke moved back, but he was close to passing out from exertion. He also said he lost hearing and didn't know that any noise had come out when he started screaming, and that the stuff falling off the shelves was landing on him, and that's why he was covering his head. He said it felt like a weight was lifted off him when the dark smoke backed up, but he felt sick right away, and the light from the flashlight made the sick feeling increase. We took an early lunch where he just sat there, pale as ever, and didn't say much other than he said he breathed in that smoke and it didn't feel right. I got him some Gatorade and his color started to come back. I never told him I saw a man when I turned on my light because we still needed to finish, and I didn't want to put him through that in his head since he had never mentioned seeing it. When we went back, the lights in the basement were on again. Half the things that had fell from the shelves were back on the entertainment center, and the TV was on baseball. There was also a different smell in the room, similar to burnt hair. It's weird. My worker stayed a half hour, got sick again, and went home for the day, leaving me alone to finish, which I didn't want to do, but had to as the other guys had their own job. After cleaning up everything with my vacuum, I began scrubbing the old blood, which is hard after congeals, mix in brain matter, and it's like glue, even with cleaner. When I was finishing up, I kept seeing the shape of a person walking. I kept seeing the shape of a person always on the side of my vision. Each time I would smell that strange burnt hair scent, and a few times I also felt like a force was pulling at items on my belt. Not sure what items, as there were several things on my belt. When I finished the job, I went to use the bathroom upstairs and in the hallway. Along the way, I heard a muffled crying or moaning. I froze up and stayed still, thinking maybe the family member had come back. And when I panned around, there was nothing, but I saw a picture on the wall of a man with a beard wearing a flannel, several other pictures on the hallway of other scenarios of the same man, different flannels with deer or fish or family. I had not seen a picture of the man, as I had not been anywhere else in the house with a bathroom, nor did I use the bathroom downstairs because pulling off the hazmat stuff is a pain. As I was securing the house, closing all the windows, locking the doors, and shutting down every light but the front porch light, I saw the front curtain move and again saw the darker than black from the front window. The last experience I will share, and this thread happened mid-July in a very bad area in Detroit. There had been an incident where a guy supposedly tried to abduct a child, was stopped by people in the neighborhood who beat the man very bad, and escaped to his house, where the neighborhood people quickly called the police and civilians surrounded the man's house to prevent escape. The police response time in this area is horrible, and people were throwing rocks through the man's window and damaged his car. The man was hurt bad by the mob and was hurt by a rock or glass and died in the home. This is assumed by DPD. From what the police officer had told me, it was a misunderstanding, and the man picked up a girl that was injured riding her bike, and some kids that knew her told their parents that the man was kidnapping her, and people overreacted, and the man was brutally beaten. The cleanup was pretty simple to do. We secured windows, cleaned up blood and bodily fluid, but as soon as I entered the house, I just felt a wave of fear and sadness, like I've never felt this before, and it hit in waves that made my legs weak. Like, I have never felt this before, and it hit in waves that made my legs weak. My working buddy, who was there, showed up late and didn't get the story from the cop like I did, but experienced the same feelings I had. The whole time we were there, we saw a form darting around corners like it was watching us, then hiding. It was similar to a small bit of fog or mist. We also heard very slight cries for help coming from several areas in the house, and also it sounded like please stop and a long no a few times. The crowd came back and yelled at the house also, and when this was going on, the activity in the house increased, and we could hear running footsteps going up the stairs, a door slam, and it sounded like the front door would open and close, but we never actually saw any of the doors move. The path of the footsteps sounded like from the front door, through the living room, to the bathroom, to the stairs, to the upstairs bungalow room. The part that really got me was I could feel the floor impacts that felt like the vibrations of someone running past me when I was cleaning the areas, and each time I would be hit by one of those waves of fear and sadness. When we left the house, there were a few people on porches hanging out like it's usual during summer, and the people were still hostile and yelling random things, but directed at us as we loaded the van and took off hazmat suits. We ignored this, but before we had loaded all the material from the house into the van and locked the house, the front door slammed hard enough to sound like a gunshot, which scared me and my crew member along with the people on the front porch to the point where they went inside. The front door deadbolt was somehow locked and we could not get it to open. I think it was a different key than the knob, so we ended up leaving several boards in the house that were left over from boarding a few of the windows. The feeling of relief when I left the house was like night and day. Inside, I was anxious, scared, paranoid, and just really down, which could be due to knowing the story, but when I got outside, it was like flipping a light switch. I immediately felt better, and me and the other guy in my crew were joking and laughing about dumb stuff, normal 19 and 20-year-old shenanigans. I have many of these stories written down in detail in a journal I started after the first 3 months of working in this job. I talked to the guys on the crew and got their strange stories from them too. I know that some of this could very well be formed by my subconscious mind to cope with traumatic situations, but some of it has no explanations, and when I hear the other members of my crew tell me their stories when they haven't been influenced by mine, that is a horse of a different color. When I have time, I will pull out the journal and give more of my experiences. My job got way more worse when I started the journal after 3 months in. Several experiences with what I think was paranormal, many situations that stressed my mental state to the point where my mask of sanity started to slip. In the end, I worked at this place for almost 2 years, and all of my crew all died. 2 from suicides, 1 from a drug overdose that could have been intentional, but we will never know. I just know that when these 3 guys my age, around 19 and 20, started this job, they all were normal and well-adjusted guys with no cares in the world other than girls, parties, and working. I watched each of them slowly drain their joys and passion for life. And I know this sounds bad, but each one that died was considered enough to die in a clean way, most likely so another person wouldn't have to see the horrible thing that we all saw so often. Like, genuinely, that's horrifying. Not only is that like scary, because like obviously going in and seeing crime scenes, like that's something that would really mess up a lot of people. That's like a really horrifying thing to see, especially when it's literally not something you signed up for and you were basically tricked into doing it. But when you leave your other coworkers like all dying, and 2 of them confirmed suicide, the other one potentially, but could also potentially have been an accident, that's scary. So this post was originally from 4 years ago. It's their first post. When I got to the end, at first I was thinking this is extremely detailed, so with some of the details they give, it sounds like maybe this is just like a scary experience, and like they said, some of it could be paranormal, but some of it could just be their mind playing tricks because of the tragedies. But then when they got to end and saying that happened, it's like, okay, this is obviously really fucking tragic. So is this something that actually happened, or is this some sort of creative writing exercise type of thing? I don't know if this is real. They haven't posted anything else revolving the paranormal besides the two stories, but if this is real, that's pretty fucking crazy. And the whole point of this, you know, subreddit is that it's supposed to be true. You're not supposed to be like adding anything or making anything up. But if it is like creative writing, it was very interesting. I'm not gonna lie, but that's crazy. That, like, I really have nothing to say other than that.